When we talk about political violence in the United States, the conversation almost always comes back to one question. Who is more violent, the left or the right?
Who is really responsible for political violence in the United States? Is it the left? Is it the right? Christians? Islam? Well, let's find out.
But the way that question gets answered often depends less on reality and more on who's doing the counting.
What the numbers say is that in the United States, over the last 10 to 15 years, the overwhelming political violence has come from the right. That's not my opinion. That's what the government and independent researchers have found.
Because right now, making the rounds, is this idea that political violence is more prevalent on the right. You heard Amy Klobuchar cite it, and you heard, well, I can't remember who else did it during the hearing yesterday, but you've seen this circulated everywhere.
The Scrubbed report, published in January 2024, it spans 3 decades of research, and literally in its opening paragraph, its opening words are here. Since 1990, far-right extremists have committed far more ideologically motivated homicides than far-left or radical Islamist extremists. They've even included figures here, saying that includes 227 events that took more than 520 lives. In this same period, far-left extremists committed 42 ideologically motivated attacks that took 78 lives.
And this comes from a couple of sources. There's a Cato study that people are citing. There is one from The Economist, I believe. And there's one that was at NIJ that the left is saying was removed because it pointed out that right-wing violence was more prevalent, when the truth is it was removed because it was inaccurate.
Anti-government militias, white supremacist violence, January 6th, which was Trump supporters. Again and again, the numbers show the same thing.
Okay, I will prove to you right now that it's bullshit. Let me show you what's not on this list. What is not included whatsoever as leftist, ideologically motivated violence.
On August 29th, 2020, someone shouted, "We got a Trump supporter here," in downtown Portland. 2 gunshots followed. Aaron Danielson, a 39-year-old conservative, was killed instantly by a self-described Antifa activist who later admitted to the murder on camera. This was captured on video. The political motivation was explicit. By any definition, this was political violence.
He was killed by a member of Antifa. The man's name was Michael Reinhold. He was shot point blank dead in the street. Why do we know? Because we have video evidence and he admitted it. And he was shot dead, point blank in the street. Why? Because he was a Trump supporter. How do we know? Because it was said on camera.
According to the databases that shape our understanding of extremist threats today, this assassination never happened. It doesn't appear in the statistics. The methodological trick? No conviction means no political violence in their tallies. The killer was shot by federal marshals before trial. Take the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, one of the most widely cited sources on extremist violence. Their reports often count drug disputes, personal arguments, and even accidents as extremist incidents if one of the people involved had ties to an extremist group. When independent researchers stripped away these inflated numbers, they found that only 58% of the ADL's incidents actually qualified as political violence. The 2017 Trump inauguration protests saw over 230 arrests after demonstrators smashed windows, torched vehicles, and caused over $100,000 in damage.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks.
None of this is included in the stat being circulated. This is not left-wing violence. It is not. It doesn't exist.
Today, and more than 100 people arrested.
That is not political violence, according to the stats that you are hearing parroted from the left right now. Why?
All charges were eventually dropped. No convictions means this coordinated political violence also disappears from the databases. Even when violence is clearly political, the language used to describe it changes how we understand it. Research shows that right-wing attacks are 29% less likely to be labeled terrorism compared to Islamist attacks. Instead, they're often categorized as hate crimes or mass shootings. That choice of words influences both public opinion and government policy.
Also, any violence in a lot of these, depending which one you're using, any act of violence committed against government at all is considered right-wing, because it must be anti-government. You have some of these that actually, I've looked through them, include Antifa violence as right-wing violence. Jeez. But none of that matters. None of that matters because the 200 arrests and the thousands of actions that you just saw after the inauguration of violence, they were not counted among left-wing violence because charges were dropped. Well, why do you think charges may have been dropped? And the man who was shot point blank dead, we have a Trump voter here, or supporter. We have a Trump supporter here, bang, bang, dead, not political violence. It's that simple.
Anti-government militias, white supremacist violence, January 6th, which was Trump supporters. Again and again, the numbers show the same thing.
Consider the Nashville school shooting. The killer left behind what police called a manifesto targeting Christians and white children at private schools. But authorities refused to release it for months, and some databases still classify this ideologically politically motivated mass murder as borderline political violence. The way political violence is studied is also affected by who's doing the research. Surveys of academics show a dramatic left-leaning tilt, especially in the social sciences. The ratio of progressive to conservative faculty has grown from 3-to-1 in the 1960s to more than 12-to-1 today. Studies show that up to 55% of academics would discriminate against conservative job applicants. Conservative scholars report workplace hostility rates of 75%, with 70% saying they self-censor their views. This ideological imbalance fundamentally shapes how research questions are framed and which answers are considered legitimate. Here's where it gets really concerning. A September 2025 survey found that 25% of very liberal Americans believe political violence can sometimes be justified. For very conservative Americans, just 3%. Among younger liberals under 45, support reaches 26%, nearly 4 times higher than young conservatives at 7%.
I want to ask you about this Rutgers report.
Good morning.
On the Network Contagion Research Center. This is their conclusion, okay? Users online are increasingly associating the memification of Luigi Mangione with calls for political violence against Elon Musk, President Trump, and others, reflecting the growing cyber social presence of assassination culture. And Aisha, you have some findings that they have here on justification.
It's alarming, and I want to put this up here. This is a justification for murder of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And you'll see here, they found that when it came to the left of center, 50% thought that it was justified to murder Elon Musk, 56% for President Trump.
But both sides massively overestimate the other's willingness to use violence. Republicans think Democrats are 25 times more violent than they actually are. Democrats think Republicans are about 20 times more violent. These misperceptions create a dangerous feedback loop where each side feels justified in preemptive action.
The latest PBS News NPR Marist poll out today shows that nearly a third of Americans now believe political violence may be necessary to get the country back on track. That's up from 19% just a year and a half ago.
Groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL have evolved from legitimate anti-hate organizations into what critics call general-purpose attack machines. Today, their definitions of extremism extend to mainstream conservatives, parents at school board meetings, and journalists critical of progressive causes. Because government agencies rely on these organizations for guidance on extremism, there's now a direct pipeline from partisan advocacy groups to federal law enforcement priorities. When the people defining the threats have clear political biases, the entire system becomes skewed.
Inciting people to go kill Mormons, like you're inciting people to attack ICE, like you're inciting people to attack Republicans. That doesn't happen. And if you look in the inner cities, Democrats are slaughtering each other day after day after day, and you don't say anything about that. You ask this question, well, does the base want people to die? Yeah. Did you see the poll where it was like 20% of Democrats said they believed in political assassinations? Did you watch the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk killing? I mean, everybody was clapping on campus. Yeah, he deserved it, Jessica. Now, if I had won a swing state Senate race after having a stroke against Moneybags, celebrity Republican, I think people should listen to me. This guy is like a symbol for the working class. He even has the hoodie, and you'd think the Democrats would listen to him. They don't listen to him. They listen to crazy liberal ladies in the cities. And I do feel conflicted, though, because, Jessica, when people say, there's this guy and these ICE people are so crazy, I get mad because it's a lie. But then when she says these ICE people are abducting and kidnapping innocent hairdressers and sending them to dungeons to be tortured, I think, well, that's scaring a lot of illegals to go home themselves. So the next time Jessica brings up all these scare stories about all of these illegals getting rounded up indiscriminately, innocent people being sent overseas, I'm just going to say I agree.
In 2025, this biased information environment produced real consequences. Charlie Kirk was assassinated by someone who believed he was fighting fascism. His killer inscribed bullet casings with anti-fascist messages. Tyler Robinson saw himself as a hero rather than a murderer. When institutions consistently present one political perspective as an existential threat, some people will conclude that violence is necessary for survival. These patterns in statistics, in academia, in media, and in advocacy all reinforce one another. Biased research gets cited by biased media, which influences biased law enforcement, which produces more biased statistics. The result is an information environment where one side appears more dangerous by default, regardless of reality. For the first time in over 3 decades, left-wing political violence now exceeds right-wing incidents. The very organizations that spent years claiming right-wing extremism was the dominant threat suddenly had to explain why their predictions were so wrong. Political violence is real, and it's serious, but the way it's counted and categorized fundamentally shapes how we understand and respond to it. If our institutions are systematically biased in how they define extremism, then the statistics we rely on won't reflect reality. Aaron Danielson and Charlie Kirk, both dead. Their killers believed they were fighting fascism or protecting democracy. They were wrong about the threats they faced, but right about one thing. Someone really did want them silenced. If we can't agree on what counts as political violence or who's committing it, how can we ever hope to stop it?
We got a Trump supporter here, bang, bang, dead. Not counted as political violence. Any of you want to trust your institutions?
The answer starts with demanding transparency from institutions that shape our understanding of these threats. Until we fix the measurement problem, we'll keep fighting symptoms while the disease spreads.
Polls that show a majority of those on the left believe it's somewhat to completely acceptable, and then blaming the right for violence and saying, you guys need to tone down the temperature. There is no living with those people in their current state until they change.
It's political inclusion, it's credible policing, it's prevention programs, it's leaders who really clearly say no to violence, and it's made clear that all of society will shun you if you commit the violence. It can't be one side is kind of wink at me that like, yeah, violence is bad, but Trump goes, don't be too soft with the protesters. You've got to really make it clear that every single leader is saying no violence, and society will ostracize you for the violence. There are better options than the violence.